Jim Jackson, NBA on TNT analyst, and he was on the call NBA TV yesterday. Jim, I've watched you a lot of times in your career, college and pro. You had one of your best performances of your life yesterday. I appreciate the honesty and doing that on live TV. When you saw this was unfolding right there in front of you, when did you get an inkling that something was up, that the Bucks were probably not going to play this game?
First of all, Dan, thank you, for having me on your show this morning. Thanks for the kind words. Early in the day, we heard some rumblings about maybe the Toronto Raptors were thinking about maybe a boycott, but we didn't have a lot of credence to that. So we kind of just went about our day preparing for the game as normal. Once we got to the venue in the arena, the Orlando Magic were out warming up their pregame warm up, with coaches kind of shooting, and so were the Milwaukee Bucks, some players out there. But as time began to pass a little bit and Orlando Magic went back to their locker room to begin their preparations, their pregame prep, last-minute adjustments before they came back out for their final warm-up before the game, they came back out and we noticed that the Milwaukee Bucks have yet to enter onto the court. And as the time began to, count down to zero on the game clock, no Milwaukee Bucks came to the court. And at that point, we got word that there had been a players' meeting and that they had decided, because of the shooting of Jacob Blake and what was going on in Kenosha, that they would boycott the basketball game.
And then you're trying to process this. What's Orlando do? Because I thought they were kind of caught off guard here. It felt like, I don't know when the Bucks voted on this, Jim, but it felt like, I don't know if it was a rush to vote or last minute, but it felt like they should have given at least Orlando a heads up there, because Orlando, they're still on the floor. And I'm going, what is going on here?
Yeah, I agree to some point, and I want to back up a little bit. I do think a couple players from the Bucks had a private meeting the night before and talked about this. Okay. Now, when they brought it to their teammates, I'm really not for sure, but it was brought in time in order to put a game plan in place. In regards to the Orlando Magic, sometimes with a plan like this, if it's going to be enacted the right way, if it's the Milwaukee Bucks, I think they felt it was better in their best interest to wait until they had everything in place. Because again, they put out calls through the ownership to the Attorney General's office in Wisconsin, also the District Attorney's office in Kenosha, to talk about the case itself. So they had a plan in place. It worked. The Orlando Magic jumped on board, and hence the other teams later that day also decided that the boycott was necessary.
If you were still in the NBA, what would you want to hear now as you move forward that would keep you in the bubble?
Well, Dan, I've been asked that a lot, and that's a trick question. And I say that because as a man that's now 49, about to be 50, my thought process is a lot different. How I would think at 24, 25, 26 years old without having the education and the reading and the knowledge that I have now is a lot different. Yeah. But I would want to see a plan together in regards to pushing the narrative of social justice, also, racial inequalities. But for the players itself, what they've been saying all along, pre-bubble, post-bubble, during the bubble, is that we need to take more leadership. Our owners need to take more responsibility within our communities, because if we don't do it, if we don't have a voice, then we're asking others who've been marginalized, who don't have the platform to affect change. We, more than anybody else, have the opportunity to do that, not just we as the players, but from an ownership, because you have a vested interest, not only in the NBA, more importantly, you have a vested interest in the communities in which you are located.
What does the commissioner need to do today? I think Jim had a freeze up with his connection here. We'll see if we can reconnect with him. Yeah, because I was wondering if the commissioner goes to the Board of Governors. I don't even know who's on the Board of Governors with the NBA.
We discussed this before the show, and I looked up the Board of Governors, and there's no clear list. There's a Board of Governors of the Basketball Hall of Fame, and I don't know if those are the same people who are the Board of Governors of the NBA.
Yes, McLeod.
I read that it's the commissioner, the owners, and their representatives. So I don't know who the representatives means, but it's the owners are part of the Board of Governors, what I just read on SI.com.
So it's an owners meeting?
I think so, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think there are other people in the room, too.
Yeah, because I don't know when the commissioner gets together with them, like what do the owners want from the commissioner? What's the commissioner want from the owners? And then you're going to have a players only meeting, from what I'm told. At what point do you do that? Because if you have a basketball game at 4:00 this afternoon, you're going to have to get these guys, shoot arounds, whatever it might be. You got to go into your normal protocol, your routine, to be able to do this. Is Jim back with us, Todd? Hey, Jim, sorry about that. We lost you there for a moment. What do you want to hear from the commissioner today, or what do you think he should say today?
Well, I think he's going to say is he supports the players, because throughout the time of putting in place the bubble, it's always been about the NBPA and the NBA working together, and I think it's witnessed by the amount of content that was produced and put together to support these narratives. Okay, so I don't see it going any other way or going left in regards to what the commissioner will say. Now, what comes out of the Board of Governors meeting is very important in regards to what is next on the agenda collectively as a group with the players and the owners and the NBA. So I wouldn't expect Adam Silver to sway away from the narrative that the players are continuing to pursue.
If a player asks you if he should play, what would you say?
I say do what's in your heart, because that's what's important. What Jim Jackson would do is a lot different. But I will say this too, that if you really want to affect change, and Dan, you've been around enough to know this, change is uncomfortable maybe to yourself and to a lot of other people. And if you're not willing to deal with that uncomfortableness, then you're not going to be able to fully give the effort and achieve the goals that you want, because you can't have it halfway. You can't say I want social change, but only want to give a little bit of your time and sacrifice in order for it to happen. If you're going to be the beacon of light, you got to go all in. If you're not all in, allow somebody else to do it that can push the agenda and the narrative in a way where now we really do affect social change.
I couldn't help but think of Kyrie Irving last night, Jim, believe it or not, because it was a couple of weeks ago, Kyrie said what he said, and people came down hard on him. Like if we really are all in it for social activism and justice, we should not be playing basketball games because it'll take away from the narrative here. And I'm paraphrasing here. And people came down hard on him saying, oh, you're not even healthy enough to be playing in the bubble. If you were healthy, would you be saying this? And Kyrie, what he said, I think is ringing true today in a lot of people's ears.
It is too, and everybody is entitled to their own opinion. I do believe that with the restart of the NBA, the platform was wide open for a lot more conversation that I don't know really would have taken place, because the platform in regards to the media was there, social media, the games on TV, the players had outlets each and every day to kind of push the message that they were trying to relay throughout the country. And the voice is so heard from the NBA, unlike maybe football, from an international perspective. So Kyrie did have a point in regards to taking away from the meat of the movement. But at the same time, I do believe that being in the bubble while I've been here has a couple things happened, Dan. One, again, it's been broadcast nationally, internationally. The advertisements, the companies that have gotten involved, the groups that have supported, minority businesses and opportunities have happened, but also the players have had a chance to spend time with each other, for hours, for days, that they normally wouldn't have. So I get a chance to talk to some guys on another team, and we can trade notes. We can come together and talk about what's next post this NBA season. And that allowed these players now to come together and kind of make the decision that we're seeing, or we will see later today. I think spread apart, the confluence of things that have come together, you still don't kind of get that. So I do think that it's had value being in the bubble as we see today.
He's Jim Jackson, former NBA player, now an analyst on NBA on TNT. How much pressure do you think is on LeBron right now?
Well, it's a lot of pressure because he's the face of the league. He's the face of social change when it speaks upon the NBA. But certain people are built to handle it. And is it always easy? No. If you look at our leaders throughout history, it's never easy when you're put in a situation where everyone is expecting you to lead the way, because you're not perfect. You're human. The insights that you may have based upon your upbringing may not equate or agree with other people. You're going to get people that are going to be negative towards you. But if you're doing things for the right reason, okay, and your heart is in the right place, and it's not about you, then you can carry that burden. Okay, and LeBron has done an outstanding job. Is it sometimes too much? Yeah. But you know what? It's certain people throughout history that have been able to be placed in that situation and be able to handle the moment. I'm waiting to see, and I'm anticipating that LeBron James will be able to step up and handle this moment just as he's done any other one.
Do you think it's a real possibility that the season is canceled?
I do. And for a bigger reason too, Dan. It's the social justice issue and the racial discrimination is something that is an interesting concept, because we're asking people to say, look at me as a person, not as a second-class citizen. You know, throughout our history, we've had many amendments, laws. I don't care if it's a Civil Rights Act. I don't care if it's fair housing discrimination, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. We've had laws to say discrimination, voter suppression, racial inequality is wrong. But laws are pen to paper. Unless you're able to change someone's mindset, or their mindset is able to change on how you view the person that looks a little bit different than you, and you don't treat them like a second-class citizen, all of these things that we're trying to accomplish, it doesn't matter, because the people in power, the people that control the pen, still see you as a second-class citizen. And until that changes, that's a reason why it's been perpetuated for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years of having the same conversation. See me as your equal. I don't want to be better than you. I'm not asking for anything more than you. I'm just asking for the same opportunities that you are afforded as an American. That's it. And until you change that mindset, Dan, and it starts with education when kids are young, on how they view themselves and other minority groups. Because when you're taught when you're young that you're superior to African Americans, Native Americans, Latino Americans, Chinese Americans, you grow up that way. And conversely, Dan, as these minority groups are told that they're inferior, they grow up with an inferior complex and always feel that they're marginalized.
It's well said. I have a theory that when Muhammad Ali passed away in the summer of 2016, I think it opened a whole new generation's eyes to what Ali stood for and who he really was. And the reaction to his death at the ESPYs that year, he had LeBron and D. Wade and Chris Paul and Carmelo, and they got up there, and that's when I think this kind of started with certainly the NBA players, and just what Ali went through, a lot of people probably didn't understand. And then, all of course, later in his life, he's beloved. You know, he's lighting the flame at the Olympics in Atlanta. But I do think that something was hatched that day or soon after when people started seeing the clips of Ali and who he really was and what he stood for. Because you have to be willing to give up something. And he did. Kaepernick gave up something. John Carlos and Tommy Smith gave up something. But others have to give up something as well. It can't just be on just these players. And I think that's the important part as we move forward.
Dan, I'm glad you brought up Muhammad Ali, who's my favorite athlete of all time. And keep in mind, back when he changed his name to Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, and he converted over to the Muslim religion, during that time when he was outspoken about the Vietnam War, about racial inequities and inequalities, even in the black community, he was shunned because a lot of black people thought that he was hurting the civil rights movement. He was popular, but he was unpopular in a lot of circles because he was rocking the boat, so to speak. It was a black man at the time in the 60s that spoke against the powers that be. So the Muhammad Ali that a lot of people, to your point, saw later in life, the beloved, one of the most beloved athletes of all time, it wasn't like that. He had to go through that struggle. He had to go through that pain. I'm sure there were times in his lives where he thought to himself, is it all worth it? Because I'm not only endangering myself, but I'm endangering my family. But he stayed with it. And again, the sacrifice for him was worth the cost down the line. And right now, with these young athletes, because of social media and the times have changed, and I think young people in general, they see a different side of the world and people and say to themselves, especially athletes now in basketball, we have an opportunity to do something. Now, what that opportunity will move forward to, we have to push a narrative, but we also have to be willing, like you said, to give up something. What is that? Our time, our money, to be able to meet with our ownership and demand that within these 30 cities where our NBA teams are located, you have a better presence in regards to voter suppression, racial injustices, incarceration, justice. Those things are pushing the narrative. And if you don't do that, then we're going to put the ball down and walk away until these demands are met.
Good to talk to you, Jim. I appreciate your time. I know you had a long day yesterday, and you're certainly starting out with a long day today, but thank you for your thoughts.
Anytime. Thanks, Dan.
That's Jim Jackson, NBA on TNT analyst.